That's what I want to hear. Because I know that I've done everything that I'm supposed to do. So I say this. I want to live a life poured out. 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 Come on, here, we say it.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Bible study Wednesday night, 7 p.m. service. I am meeting you here at the Body of Christ Christian Center live here in O'Fallon, Illinois. And tonight I want to welcome you again to our Bible study service. So now I want to first give honor and reference to God who's the head of my life. And also I want to, in their absence, I want to give honor to my bishop, Arthur W. Ramsey Jr., Pastor Andrea Ramsey, and our associate pastor, Arthur Ramsey III. So on tonight, I want to talk about something called resilience. So we are in 2020, we're at the end of 2020, so we understand there's a lot that's happened this year. A lot of trauma has taken place, a lot of just ups and downs. One minute seems like things okay, then sometimes it seems like the world's crashing around you. You turn on the news, you see different things going on, and it's like all negative. And it's kind of like you want to pull yourself up, you want to be happy, you want to have some type of positive outlook. But then it's like you keep getting notifications saying, well, this is going up, coronavirus cases are going up, shutdowns, things like that. So we're not able to freely move and roam like we used to. So tonight I want to talk about a topic called resilience. So, and my title tonight is Resilience, the Big Bounce Back. And so I kind of equate resilience to, I don't know if you can see it, it's like a slinky. It's kind of like being stretched. So when we have different trials and tribulations in our lives, we're stretched, just like the slinky is. But then, you know, God is able to get us through it, and then we can bounce back. So with that being said, I want to kind of tell you what resilience is. So the definition for it is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability of a substance or an object to spring back into shape, or what we say elasticity. So when we think about resilience, what comes to mind? Maybe losing your job and then waiting 6 months or almost a year to get a new job. So in between that time, you may have to seek unemployment. You're trying to, you know, going through the process of trying to find another job. Bills are coming in. You don't know how you're going to pay them. So that's a form of resilience. So you're going through and then you make it to the other side to where you have a job and now you're employed. Same thing with being diagnosed with a terminal illness. Same thing. Just being resilient through it all, having a positive mindset, knowing that you're going to be healed, you're going to get better, and things of that nature. That's being resilient, just walking through the whole process. Getting treatment, things like that you need to stay healthy or try to, you know, preserve your life. Or another thing could be losing a loved one and then having to adjust your life to that person not no longer being here. And then you just have to learn how to, you know, walk through life without them. And day by day you're taking those steps, you know, going about your daily life, things like that. You may grieve and things like that, but you're still going through your daily activities and things you have to do to keep your life going. One of the things, examples I can use is on my job when, with grief. And so like with one of my kids, for example, one young lady, she lost her mother. And she was trying her best just to kind of keep it together. And I was like, are you okay? And she was like, I'm gonna be fine. She was trying to take care of everybody else. And I said, it's gonna hit. And when it's gonna hit hard. I didn't say that to her. But one thing I can say, she kept pushing through. She kept coming to school. She kept being resilient. And she was very close to her mom. So, and that's what I see with a lot of my students. I'm a school counselor by profession. And so a lot of the kids I have, they have been through it all, like homelessness, being hungry, just going from place to place. They've been abused, things like that. And they just keep coming to school. They keep doing what they need to do. And so that's what I call being resilient. And so to become resilient, one would have to figure you would have to experience some type of painful or traumatic event in your life, right? That's true. I'm sure it's safe to say that most, if not all of us, have experienced some type of trauma in our lives to where we've got through it. You know, with the help of God, we've got through it. We pushed through and pushed through and pushed through. And the evidence of it is that we're still standing. We're waking up every morning. We're still going. We're still doing what we have to do. Even though all hell could be breaking loose over here on the side or anything like that, we just keep it going. We're keeping going and keeping going. Even though we might be tired, we want to throw in the towel. We want to say, God, I give up. I don't want to do this no more. Like, I'm done. But we keep going. And so that's a sign of resilience. Okay. So tonight, I want to talk about a story in the Bible that demonstrates resilience. And so there's a lot of stories in the Bible that demonstrate resilience, a whole lot of them. But tonight I want to talk about Joseph. So Joseph, not Mary's husband, but Joseph, the son of Jacob and Rachel in Genesis. He's who I want to talk about tonight. I think if I were him and things he went through, besides Job is another one, but tonight I want to talk about Joseph. I think I would have thrown in the towel. I mean, this man experienced setback after setback after setback. And I'm like, geez, when just reading the story and reading it multiple times throughout the years, it's like, yeah, I think after so many times I would have been like, nope, I'm done. I'm not doing it. So, tonight I'm going to start with, we're going to start at Genesis chapter 37, verses 2 through 4. And so I'm going to read it. All of my scriptures will be coming from the King James Version of the Bible. Okay, and it says, these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel, who is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And so when it talks about the coat of many colors, that was a sign of rank, a sign of valor. So that was like a type of status that he gave Joseph. And verse 4 says, and when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him. They could not speak peaceably unto him. So I'm just going to give you a little snapshot of Joseph just a little bit. So he was the 11th son of Jacob and the oldest son of Rachel. He was his father's favorite, like I just read. He was given a coat of many colors. And he was a dreamer. God gave him the gift of dreams and dreams interpretation. And he was hated by his brothers. Now when reading this, I kind of looked at it as sometimes as parents, we can have that one child that we might favor over the others. But then that causes issue among the siblings, which is what I believe Jacob did. I know a lot of people don't talk about that, but I kind of looked at it like, yeah, he shouldn't have done it, like made a difference between his sons. But he kind of kicked that off between the brothers and Joseph. So then now I'm going to go down to verse 5. And I'm going to read 5 through 11. And it reads, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheep arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheep. And his brother said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. So I know most of you all know a lot of times when God reveals something to you or he tells you something, it's not always in the best interest to go run your mouth saying anything to anybody. I don't know if you all can pick up any patterns in your life where you might have been excited, or like Joseph was when he had these dreams of God revealing to him what was going to actually take place later on. And so a lot of times we might say, well, I had this dream about such and such that I received this blessing. I got $1,000 and this and that. And God promised me this. Or if God promised you something, and you say, well, God promised he going to do this for me. Or you get a prophecy or something like that. And you might go run and tell somebody or whatnot. And then next thing you know, it don't happen. Like, what happened to, like, what happened? It's happened to me before. And I'm just like, I believe God. I knew he was going to do it. And all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. And so this is what I'm saying is that with Joseph is that his brothers, they were just like, I think they felt like he was being cocky or arrogant. You might want to say that, but then I think it was more so he was excited. And he was young. So he was kind of excited about, what God had showed on to him. And so everything, again, is not meant to be shared with everybody. Sometimes when God shows you something, just be quiet. Just be quiet. I am learning it myself to shut up. So I don't say nothing. So a lot of stuff might be going on, I don't tell nobody. And then because I want to actually see it come to pass. So one story, I had a book in my Kindle, and it was talking about warfare. And there was a lady in the book, and her husband was desperately trying to have a baby. And so every time she would get pregnant, she had a friend that lived next door to her. So every time she would get pregnant, she would go tell this lady. And she would be so excited, and then she would have this dream where this bull would come towards her stomach, and it would ram her in the stomach, and every time she would wake up from that, she would miscarry. She would lose the baby. And so after a while, they was just like, wait a minute, something's not right. So they start praying and everything like that. And so the wife had another dream where the same bull was coming at her, but this time it hit a brick wall before it could get to her, and it died. So the next morning, they heard screams coming from her neighbor, her friend's house. So they ran over there, and the lady was dead. They heard her scream, she died. She was dead, and the interesting thing was that she had a big gash on her forehead, like the bull would have in the dream. And so I say all that to say, again, just kind of, God reveals something to you, because one thing you don't want is a bunch of setbacks. A bunch of people hindering your dreams and things that you have going for yourself. Okay. So now it's about to go down. And so what I mean by that is in verses 12 through 17 in chapter 37 of Genesis, I'm not going to read it. You can read it at your own leisure. It says, so Jacob sends Joseph out to go check and see where his brothers are. And so, again, it's not always good to favor one child over another, because it happens in real life. It happens now. And so in verses 18 through 22, I'm going to read those verses in chapter 37. And it says, and when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say, some evil beast have devoured him, and we shall see what will come of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. So, a few points from that. They saw him coming because they recognized that coat of many colors. So they said, all right, here come this dude. Like, here he come, what he finna be talking about. And so, they really showed in their moment how much they hated him. Again, which I feel was fueled by the father making a difference between the brothers. I think if the dad didn't make a difference between the brothers, it might not have been an issue. But we all know things work together for the good of the Lord. So everything was put into motion for what was to come. So they was a little salty about him being favored by the daddy and about him talking about these dreams about them going to be bound down to him. They was like, we ain't get ready to bow down to this dude. We ain't get ready to do that. So I don't know what he's talking about. So they initially wanted to kill him, as I read, so they wanted to kill him. But instead, the eldest brother, Reuben, was saying, no, let's not even do that. So the hand of the Lord was on his life even then, because they were going to kill him. But instead, they put him in a pit and they ripped him of his clothes, his coat. So when studying this, it was saying the pit was like a deep dungeon-like place. And a lot of times that's what they would put prisoners in for punishment. But at the same time, it's like it's not easy for you, or it's nearly impossible for you to get out of this pit on your own. So like if he was down in the pit, it would take somebody to come back to actually help get him out of the pit. He couldn't do it on his own. So, moving down to verses 23 to 36, so I'm not going to read those. Again, he was stripped of his coat at this point and thrown in the pit. Again, he was discovered by the Midianites, who sold him to the Egyptians, thereby making him a slave. So now, he's gone from being in the pit and being stripped of his coat, and now he's going to be enslaved. So it keeps getting worse and worse. So at this point, I know most people be like, I'm done, like just give up the ghost, whatever I gotta do, I'm done. So the interesting thing I want to point out before I get to get further is that how things kind of have a way of coming back around. So if you've ever studied or read the story of Jacob, you know that he was a trickster. That was his name before God changed it to Israel. So the brothers back in 37 and 32, the brothers took the coat, they dipped it in the blood of an animal that they killed. So it made it seem like to the father that a wild animal had killed Joseph and that he was dead. So what they did was they tricked their father into believing that Joseph was dead. But what's interesting is that if you go back to chapter 37, you see where Jacob did the very same thing to his father Isaac. He tricked him into believing he was his twin Esau, so he can receive the blessing. So it all kind of came kind of full circle. So they tricked the daddy, he's tricked his daddy before. And then another interesting thing was that Joseph being his favorite, he was also his mother Rebecca's favorite. Jacob was his favorite. She was the one that actually helped him trick his dad, because his dad's eyesight was failing at the time, so he couldn't tell who was who. Now he could recognize the voice, because in the verses he was saying, you sound like Jacob, but touching him, because Esau was hairy, that's his twin, he was the hairy twin. So he was the hairy twin, so they made like a wool, they took the wool and put it on him to make it seem like it was Esau. He was like, you feel like Esau, but you sound like Jacob. So he kind of knew something, but I guess he said, well, maybe this is Esau because of the hair or whatever that Jacob was wearing. And so he ended up tricking his father and taking the blessing away from his twin. Okay. So now I'm going to go to chapter 39. That's where it picks back up. And then I want to go to verses 1 through 4 of chapter 39. And it reads, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, that he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. So I find it interesting, it said he was a prosperous man, but here he is a slave. So sometimes when we're going through things in life, God will speak to us and say, you're prosperous, you are, wealthy. He'll start speaking things to us, while at the same time we're dealing with whatever trauma we're dealing with, whatever trial or tribulation. And you're like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know. It don't look like it to me. Like, it looked like some mess. This is what it looked like. But, at the same time, God was saying Joseph was a prosperous man. It's like, but he's a slave. But God can see further than what we can see. And that's the whole thing about it. Like, we have to really put our trust in God. And it's not always an easy thing to do. Is to, trust God when we're going through stuff, because we like, God, can you just deliver me from this stuff? Why I got to go through this or whatever to get to the promise that you spoken to me. But when it all comes together and you can look back and you be like, okay, now I see why I had to go through all that. I see why now. Like even my life, I've experienced trauma. And so now the purpose of it is not for myself. Just like with Joseph, he saved the whole nation. So the trauma and everything that he experienced wasn't just for him. It was for an entire nation to save them. And so that's the same thing with our lives. So, you know, when we go through trauma and traumatic events and trials and tribulations, a lot of times there are going to be people that we cross paths with, that we go through the same thing we're going through, and we're going to be able to minister to them and let them know this is how I got over it. So he was enslaved. Now we're in chapter 39, verses 1 through 4. He was enslaved, but he was made overseer of Potiphar's house, which is interesting. Because of his presence and character, and they realized that the Lord was with him. And because of his presence and because of him being there, that Potiphar's house was blessed. And that's something that he realized. Okay, I'm being blessed because of he's here and because of his God. And so I'm going to make him overseer of everything. And he was favored and trusted, and he was prosperous again. And so it begins. So a lot of times in life, we're doing good. You know, we go out, come out of one trauma, we good, we riding high, then boom, here comes something else. So Potiphar's wife steps into the scene. Now we're in verse 7. So she comes on the scene. So she's checking Joseph out. And so I'm going to read it. And so we're going to read from verses 7 through 10. And it says, and it came to pass after these things, and this was after it talks about how Joseph was favored by Potiphar, and he was overseer. And it came to pass that after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused. And he said unto his master's wife, behold, my master watereth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass that she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. So she kept trying and trying to get with Joseph and get him to sleep with her, and he kept saying no, because his integrity was at stake. And he knew that he was being blessed. Even though he was still a slave, he was made overseer, so he was still living pretty decent. And so he wasn't trying to mess it up, and plus he wasn't trying to sin against God. So his relationship with God was the utmost importance. But she kept coming, and she kept coming, and so she tried, and she approached him, and he ran from her, and she was able to snatch a piece of his clothing as he ran off. And so she went to her husband, Potiphar, and basically said that Joseph tried to rape her. And she put on this big show about she was crying. So those are the remaining verses from 11 all the way to 18, if you want to read it. And so she put on this big to-do about, oh, he tried to rape me and all this kind of stuff, and she crying and boo-hooing or whatever. So, and that happens in real life. I've known people to do that to other people. I've known women to do that to me because they didn't want them anymore. So, I mean, those kind of things happen. And so now he's going from overseer in Potiphar's house, and now he's thrown into prison. So here we go. So here we go. We're being stretched again. And so now he's in prison. So sometimes in life, we can experience things like setback after setback after setback. And you're trying to figure out, like, God, what is going on? Why do I keep, experiencing these setbacks? And it seems like life is like that. It's like a roller coaster. It's like 1 minute you're up at the top and you ride and everything. And then all of a sudden you get up to the top of the hill, then you look down and it's boom, you gotta go down. And so a lot of times that's how life is. But Jeremiah 29:11 reads, and I'm going to read that for you. It says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. So that's Jeremiah 29:11. So even when we're going through things and, it seems like one thing after another, we have to keep reminding ourselves that God has great thoughts towards us. He has a great plan for us. And it might not look like it at the beginning, it might not look like it when we're dealing with stuff, but I know from my own life, it's not, you can make it through, you can push through. And that's what resilience is pushing through. It's like, keeping a good attitude of faith, just saying, I'm gonna get through this no matter what. Because a lot of times stuff come to knock us down, but we have to keep getting back up. And sometimes you're tired, you don't wanna do it, you just wanna say, just knock me out, I'm done. Like just give me a Mike Tyson punch or something, knock me out. I'm done. But resilience is the ability to keep pushing through and pushing through. Even when you got tears in your eyes and you just like want to scream and say, God, I can't do this anymore. But you can't, you have to push through. Because it's stuff on the other side waiting on you to show up. Because I know 10 years ago, when I was going through a battle for my life where I wanted to commit suicide because my mind was messed up and I couldn't understand what was going on and why was I experiencing this. And so I was angry and bitter. And so I was just like, why does this have to happen to me? This don't happen to nobody else. It's like, I feel like I got a target on my back or something all the time, this stuff always happening to me. But what it taught me was that whole experience taught me was that I'm strong, I can push through. And that's the same thing for anybody else. It's like stuff come to take us out of here, but like you can just push through, you keep going. And that's what I did. At one point I wanted to give up, but then I was able to get up and push through and say, I want to live. I want to do, I want to, enjoy my life. And I even said to God, if you give me another chance, I'm going to enjoy my life. So everything that I want to do, I'm going to do it. And so on the other side of that, so one side it was like all this hell, confusion, trauma, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, all that kind of stuff like that over here. But then pushing through and being resilient on the other side was I get to be free. I learned how to fight in the spirit. Not so much in the flesh. I learned how to fight in the spirit. So when things come upon me, I know what to do. Things that I've never experienced in my life, I've been able to experience, but that was on the other side. So a lot of times we're on one side looking at all the chaos and confusion on one side, but then it's the other side you got to push through to get to. And again, it hurts. Sometimes you cry, you scream, you want to kick stuff. I'm a thrower. I'm just being honest. So I don't throw none at people. But that's one of my things is that like when I get real upset, I just find something and throw it. But that's like something that's from my family that was passed down to me because I got grandparents, all that kind of stuff, parents, my aunties and uncles, they do that. And so it's just, you have to just kind of keep pushing through and pushing through and pushing through. Because I'm telling you, the other side is where it's at. So I know that Joseph, so back to Joseph. So I know that he probably had some times in his life where he wanted to be distraught. He wanted to be discouraged because you're not in prison. But the thing about it is, remember God said that he was prosperous. And so at the end of the day, he was in prison, but he was made overseer in prison. So how is it that, so it must be something about his character and how he was carrying himself even through all the trauma that he was made overseer twice. And so now he was able to be overseer, and then he was also, so this was a setup for him. This is where the game changed. Because now, even though he's in prison, he meets the chief butler and the baker. And so they had, these two people, they had dreams, and they were kind of troubled by it. And so him having to give the dream interpretation, they asked him. So he was able to interpret the dreams. And they actually came to pass. And so this was the setup for him because he didn't know when or where he was getting out of prison. He didn't know when he was going to get out. And so what ended up happening is in chapter 41, so now we're on chapter 41. And so Pharaoh was troubled because he started having dreams. And the dreams were basically about a famine that was going to take place. And also 7 years. So it's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. But he didn't know that right away because he couldn't interpret his dream. So he went and got different people to try to interpret it, and they couldn't do it. And so Joseph interpreted the dream for the chief butler, and he was actually restored back to his position as the chief butler to Pharaoh. And so by that time, the chief butler was like, hey, I remember the Hebrew, which was Joseph, that was in prison. He interpreted my dream and it came to pass. He said, well, what about him? And so they asked for Joseph. He came and he interpreted the dream for Pharaoh. And so by him doing that, he was able to save a whole nation from famine. Because what happened is he told them it was going to be 7 years of plenty, and then after that it would be 7 years of famine. And so by him interpreting that dream, they were able to save food to prepare for the famine. So when the famine actually came, they had food stored. And so they were able to save a nation. So now, here come his brothers. These same brothers that wanted him dead, that hated him. So this is from chapters 42 all the way to 50. So if I could just sum it up for you. So the land where Jacob, his dad, and his brothers they were experiencing a famine. So they came to Egypt to get food. Jacob sent them to get food. All of them came except for the youngest brother Benjamin. And so they come to Joseph for help, but the thing is they didn't know who Joseph was, but he knew who they were. And so one thing I want to point out is in Psalms 110 and 1. And it says, I'm going to read it. And it says, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. So at this point, a lot of times in life, especially like when you experience things when people do you wrong, or you get hurt, or people try to wish death upon you, things like that, a lot of times God will take what is bad and turn it around for your good. He'll make your enemies your footstool. And so people come, so now they got to come back to Joseph. The one person that they wanted dead, now they got to come to him for help. So he helped them and everything, but he told them they had to bring their brother back, Benjamin. And so when Jacob gets wind of this, the dad, because he actually took one of the brothers, Simeon, and imprisoned him as a ransom until they brought the younger brother, Benjamin. And so Judah, one of the brothers, had to go back to Jacob and say, we need Benjamin here, or we can't, get food and things like that. And so what ended up happening was that Jacob initially was like, no, because I already lost Joseph, I'm still grieving over him. So if something happened to Benjamin, he said, I'm pretty much done. It's over with. But he allowed Benjamin, after much convincing, he let him go. And so what ended up happening was that his dreams came to pass. So we're looking at chapter 43, verses 26 and verses 28. I'm going to read that. And it says, and when Joseph came home, they brought him, the brothers, the present which was in their hand, into the house, and bowed themselves to the earth. So that's one manifestation. Then it says in 28, and they answered, thy servant, our father, is in good health. And so, because this is when Joseph asked about Jacob. He wanted to know, was his dad okay, or was he alive? And in 28 they said, and they answered, thy servant, our father, is in good health. He is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. So if you remember back in chapter 37, he said in the dream that the sheaves will make obeisance to his sheep. And so basically he was interpreting that the brothers will bow down to him. And so it actually ended up manifesting. And so again, we may not see the end from the beginning. But just know if God said something, he said what he said. That's it. You can take it to the bank. Now, do we always take it to the bank? No. Not at all. Sometimes we have to put our own flesh in there and say, well, such and such this to happen, or something might happen, on the journey to whatever promise God gave us. And it's like we have these setbacks, and then next thing you know, it's like, no, God didn't say that. He didn't promise that or whatever. But he said what he said, and it ended up coming to pass. So Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, to everything there is a season. Pretty much is what it says. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. So again, things work out in God's timing. So a lot of times we don't understand why things are not happening, why we're going through certain things. But I promise you, once you get to the other side, you're going to see like, okay, now I see why this happened this way and this happened that way. And so I know for me, that's always the hard thing for me to accept is God's timing. Because I want stuff when I want it. Not in an obnoxious way. I feel like when I pray for something, I should get it right there. I mean, that's how I am, but it's like, it don't work like that all the time. It just don't. So I'm more accepting of it now. But again, God's timing is perfect. That's something I do know in my life because I've experienced things. Not like, well, why did it happen in this time? But then when it finally happened, I'm like, oh, okay, now I see why it happened now. This is perfect timing. So what I want to say is this. If Joseph hadn't been betrayed by his brothers, thrown in the pit, sold into slavery, being propositioned by Potiphar's wife, and accused of attempted rape, thrown into prison, and while in prison interpreting dreams and being of service, he would have never been able to be remembered by the chief butler. So everything was set up for him to be put in a position to where ultimately he became the second ruler of Egypt, right under Pharaoh. And Pharaoh put him over Egypt. And so this is why the brothers had to come to him for food and things of that nature. And so everything just added up, even though it was like rocky and he kept having setbacks. It seemed like he would be doing okay and he have another setback. But at the end of the day, when you're good to people and you help people, people remember you. And that's what happened with the chief butler. He remembered Joseph. He said, wait a minute. I remember a Hebrew guy, and he interpreted my dreams. And so that was the key for Joseph to get out of prison. And that's what set him up to be second ruler in Egypt. And he was able to help his brothers. And so eventually he ended up revealing himself to his brothers. And again, they bowed down to him. And so I just want to say this. I want to encourage you that no matter how rocky, your life may be right now. I know a lot of people say 2020 was horrible. But I'm going to just be honest. 2020 for me, I like to travel. I couldn't really go where I wanted to go. And so it started getting to me a little bit because I like to be out. But one thing I can say about 2020 as far as like with me is that it opened my eyes spiritually. I think this year was one of those years was like a game changer. It opened your eyes spiritually. It made you strong in the Lord. Like if you weren't strong in the Lord before, you'd be strong this year. I think it drew a lot of people closer to God. So just be encouraged. Be encouraged. Because just like Joseph, he went through a lot. But he was resilient through it all. He persevered, he pushed through, and he was resilient. And so we have to fight. Winston Churchill has a quote that says, if you feel like you're going through hell, keep walking, keep going. Keep going. Just keep going. And that's what I tell myself all the time. Like stuff might come out, like just focus, keep going forward, keep going. And sometimes I might say it out loud. People like, are you talking to yourself? Like, I ain't talking to myself. I'll tell people all the time, yeah, I talk to myself and I answer. Because I need expert advice. But that's a little joke. But anyway. So yeah, just keep pushing, keep going. I know a lot of people say, I can't wait till 2020 over. I look at it like this, take it one day at a time. Because again, life is like a roller coaster. We don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. But what we do have to be is on guard and ready for anything that may come up. So I want to encourage you to stay in the Word, read your Bible, stay in the Word. If you have certain scriptures, confess those daily, read confessions, confess over yourself, anoint yourself, pray, be on guard, watch. Because again, the adversary is out here seeking whom he may devour. So he's out here. So we have your strategy ready. because he sure got a strategy against you, and he's going to use it. But again, I want to encourage you to stay in the faith. It's going to be okay. You can push through anything. If I can make it through what I did 10 years ago, trust me. Because there was a time I ain't see no way out. I'm like, yeah, I ain't gonna do this. I'm like, nah, I don't see no way out. Like, I feel like it was just over. Like, I'm like, I can't get, it seemed like I would get okay, and then it's like, boom, I get knocked back down again. It's like, and then I'm struggling, and it's like, I get back up again, it's like, boom. But it's like, when I really set my mind to saying, I'm gonna push through this, I'm gonna get through this, I'm fighting. That's when things turned around, and that's what we have to do. And we have to walk by faith and not by sight. We, I don't care what it look like. I'm like, well, it may look like this, but I know it don't have, it's not that. And so, and that's, even if I have to say it out loud, I walk by faith and not by sight. I walk by faith and not by sight. And before I close, I had a friend when I was in grad school, we were in class together. And in grad school, I had straight A's up until I think I had this this professor called Dr. Newsom. And my last 3 classes were with him. And he gave tests all the time, and they would fill in the blank. And I hate filling the blank tests. I get anxiety for whatever reason. I would know the material, but when I see that blank line, I'm like, oh God. But I remember her saying that I'm gonna get an A in this class. I don't care what it looked like. And so we had a midterm. I think I got a C on the midterm, and she got a D, I believe. And I was like, well, there go my 4.0. I ain't, that's gonna mess up my transcript. And then she was like, I don't care. I walk by faith and not by sight. She kept saying it. And I said, okay. So I started following her lead. And so the blessed part with that was that in all 3 of his classes, I got A's. So I was able to graduate from grad school with straight A's. But I kept saying, I took on what she was saying. It's like, I walk by faith and not by sight. So being resilient is having faith. It's pushing through. Walk by faith and not by sight. No matter what it look like, remember what God said. If God promised you a thing, that's it. And even when the enemy try to tell you, oh, that's not going to happen, or something might happen to make you feel like that, like, no, God said, blah, 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 and that's it. That's what you got to do. And so, my last scripture for tonight is Galatians 6 and 9. And it reads, and let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And so, with that being said, I want to encourage you, don't faint, don't give up, keep pushing. One of the things I can tell you, practice self-care. That's something I'm big on, practice self-care. Even if you have to go for a walk. For me, my way of practicing self-care is that I go for long drives by myself. I put my music on and I'm gone. That's part of self-care. If you have friends or somebody in your family, reach out to them. Talk to them about what's going on with somebody you can trust. That's somebody you can trust. Not just anybody, somebody you can trust. And just push through. You can make it, because at the end of the day, you making it because you're still standing. Every day you open your eyes, you made it. I'm like, Lord, I made it another day. I wake up every morning, I was like, hey, God, what you doing? That's what I said. I'm like, what you doing? So I'm heading out, like, I thank God for, letting me see another day, because I remember a time I didn't want to see another day. So, with that being said, if there's anybody out there who wants to give their life to the Lord, I want to encourage you to think about what you'll stand to gain if you give your life to the Lord. So I'm not going to say that life is all going to be roses and everything like that, but one thing I can promise you, that God will be with you every step of the way. You need a Savior. You need a covering. You need somebody to be there with you, to help you do whatever you need to help you with. Because I know for myself, it is nothing like having God in your life. When I say he come through with the come through, he come through with the come through. He come through every time. He's never late. He's always on time. And so with that being said, I want you to say this quick prayer with me. Father God, I am a sinner. I ask that you forgive me and come into my life. I will make you my Lord and Savior. And so if you said that prayer tonight, I want you to congratulate yourself. You are now part of the kingdom. You are now a son of God. And so congratulations. And so with that being said, this is Minister Crystal Hilson coming to you live from the Body of Christ Christian Center. We're here on Fallon, Illinois, and meet us back here again next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Have a good night.